distinguished contributions to the moral and spiritual lives of the community and the nation. First, the Abe Lincoln Award for Radio. When a broadcaster has a personal commitment to the community service, much good can be accomplished. When that broadcaster is vice president and general manager of the largest radio station in America, the results can be impressive. Innovative programming, meaningful charity work, and personal community involvement are synonymous with the accomplishments of our next recipient. The 1982 Abe Lincoln Award for Radio is presented to Rick Devlin, WOR Radio, New York City.
Christmas is traditionally the happiest time of year. But for many children in orphanages, shelters, and hospitals, it's a time of empty stockings, empty dreams, and empty hopes. The WOR Children's Christmas Fund, now in its 36th year, has sought to change that. From a humble beginning of helping 400 children, the fund now provides Christmas toys and clothing for more than 75,000 youngsters. Under Rick Devlin's direction, dozens of WOR employees work virtually year-round on the Children's Christmas Fund. Devlin himself goes on the air to appeal for money. These spots even run during the summer. The station pays all of the operating costs so that every dollar collected goes to the children. As father of 3 children, Rick Devlin takes special interest in charities that involve youth. The annual WOR Leukemia Radiothon is another good example. This 22-hour commercial-free extravaganza raised more than $180,000 last year. For 7 years, Devlin has participated in the marathon Walk for the March of Dimes, raising more money for this event than any other person in the United States.
I think this year, in addition to the teamwork concept, my personal goal, I think, will be to try to double my contributions from friends and people that know me, that have gotten behind me in the past, that are willing to do it, although I must confess that the people say 20 miles doesn't seem that long, but when you're actually out there walking it, that last curve you have to get over in New York City seems like you're going up Mount Everest. But people don't realize, I guess, that Manhattan literally slopes downhill, down towards the Battery, and when you have to make that 10-mile walk back up to Central Park, it gets a little bit long.
During my 2 years at the March of Dimes, I've come to know Rick Devlin. It's been both a pleasure and an honor to work with him and to know his commitment to improve the quality of life. I'm happy to know that he's being honored for that commitment.
As a native New Yorker, Rick Devlin takes great pride in his city and its people. In a unique project that demonstrated that the private sector and the municipal government can cooperate to improve the city, he created the New York Sweeps Contest, a project sponsored jointly by WOR Radio and Citibank in cooperation with the New York Sanitation Department to encourage New York City store owners to keep their own storefronts clean. WOR promoted the contest on the air and donated prizes, $100 to daily winners, $500 to monthly winners, with all participants eligible for the grand prize of $5,000. Over 3,000 store owners participated, and WOR awarded $53,000 in prize money.
I guess I've been involved with this now several years, and it's been a project that, when we first took it over, seemed like it'd be almost an impossibility to accomplish, and yet when we have taken our resources and put them into a specific area and specific programs, that the results have been absolutely amazing.
I want to second and really emphasize the great help WOR has given us in this whole campaign. They support us financially, and very importantly, they give us a lot of PSA time, which we rely on, as you fellows all know.
Mr. Rick Devlin, WOR Radio, New York.
Thank you very much. I am deeply honored to be the recipient this year of the Abe Lincoln Award. It comes as quite a surprise to me, and thank you very much, Ed and Dr. Allen. I appreciate it. I think in that film, which, by the way, John Chancellor was not worried about my performance, I can honestly say. He was sitting behind me. I think gives an idea of what WOR Radio has done in New York City and in the environments around it. I firmly believe in the last 6 years that I've been running the radio station in not only giving time, but putting an awful lot of personal involvement into the projects that we undertake. I think that in both radio and television, has to be some criticism about what we have done. I firmly believe that we should put back in an awful lot of not only our time, but our resources into it. At WR Radio, some of the projects that you've seen depicted this evening, we have a budget of well in excess of $300,000 of cash money that we pay out in salaries, time, and awards throughout the entire year, and we do feel it does make an impact. I would like, certainly, however, when all of you do come to New York, do not call me up if you find a scrap of paper on the streets. We can only try. That was all. Once again, it's been a real honor for me to be the recipient. It's really not only a reflection of the time and effort put in by myself, but really it's the staff back at the station that does it. And although I do travel around, I must apologize being in Fort Worth for the first time, and however, being in Dallas. I did have a strange experience last night, which I guess I have to apologize to all of you for, because when I got to the airport, one of your taxi drivers, who certainly couldn't have had a simple name like mine of Rick Devlin, he had to be called Billy Joe Bob Doobadaba, or whatever it was, came up and he took my bag and he said, "Mr. Devlin, welcome to Fort Worth Dallas International Airport." I said, "Thank you very much," told him where I was going. And my name, although it's known as Rick Devlin, I'm actually named after my father, so it's got Junior. And he looked at my bag and he said, "Excuse me, Mr. Devlin, welcome to the city, but we must tell you one thing. Down here in Dallas, Fort Worth, only one person's allowed to have JR in his bags." Thank you very much.
A general assignments reporter in the news business is expected to present the facts in an accurate way, thus fulfilling his obligation as a journalist. But there are those assignments which require much more than just cold facts. Our next honoree this evening possesses those qualities of sensitivity, honesty, and credibility which enabled him to tell those special stories. The 1982 Abe Lincoln Award for Television goes to John Criswell, WFAA Television, Dallas, Fort Worth.
It is a dramatic reenactment of an actual crime taken from police records. Police and Crime Stoppers hope the details shown may cause someone to remember and report what they know about the person or persons involved. Police say it all began here in Oak Cliff at the Village Fair Shopping Center about 9 o'clock, December 23rd.
One of the major criticisms of broadcast journalism is that only bad news is reported and never any good news. Crime Stoppers, a weekly news series on WFAA TV, has sought to take positive steps to solve the bad news of crime through an effective use of the media. John Criswell had an active role in the creative planning and development of Crime Stoppers. He not only serves as producer of the series, but also writes and reports each story, casts and coaches amateur talent chosen from the station personnel, and directs the action in the field.
Every week I give John Criswell a copy of a police offense, a criminal happening, and he takes the bare bones facts and turns it into a television production for us. We present the reenactment because sometimes people see part of a crime but don't know it's a crime.
Let's go. Get out. Here, get out.
This reenactment comes from an all-night crime spree which occurred just before Christmas. It involves robbery and rape, which lasted through the night. The Crime Stoppers series deals with the stark realities of fighting crime. A true test of success is the results. Criswell's efforts have resulted in 50 arrests, the clearing of 160 crimes, and the recovery of $200,000 in stolen property.
News 8 at 10 with John Criswell.
His duties and responsibilities as a news reporter demand a great deal of time. But Criswell still devotes much of his skill and abilities as a communicator to a number of civic and charitable projects. Most notably, he is the co-founder of the Deaf Action Center, which served more than 1,000 individuals last year and handled in excess of 15,000 phone calls for information and referral. It is this sensitivity to human need that led John Criswell to a very special assignment.
To be without anyone in the world
is hard to imagine. But there are a lot of kids in Dallas-Fort Worth who have to face the reality of being alone.
The Wednesday's Child series, developed in another city, was brought to Dallas-Fort Worth at an opportune time. Due to federal budget cuts, the Department of Human Resources had lost its funding for the placement of these so-called hard-to-place children. With this new assignment, John had a unique opportunity to fulfill his duties as a journalist.
Miguel and Yolanda are brother and sister, 4 and 3 years old. They have learned to cope with an unusual hereditary handicap, which calls for adoptive parents with special resources. Miguel and Yolanda were born with congenital cataracts.
John involves himself with each of these little stories in a poignant way. This means holding a child's hand, going on rides, sharing a soft drink, and patience. But these are the things that release the little personality hidden behind a handicap or a rough past. It would be easy to paint a too pretty picture by giving the impression that a little love can solve all problems. But John chooses to write these reports on 2 levels, so as not to damage a child's self-image, but to let the adult viewer know of past abuse and present and future difficulties.
You've probably noticed during our trip to Penny Whistle Park, they are afraid of fast rides and prefer to return to the docile, predictable boats. That's the kind of parents this brother and sister need. Predictable, stable, quiet, always there. If you've just heard yourself described, call the Department of Human Resources.
In perspective, if 2 or 3 of these children had been adopted, the series would have been a success. As of January 1982, 50 out of 60 of these so-called hard-to-place children have been adopted.
I'm exploiting kids, there's no question about it, but it's a benevolent exploitation. I guess kids in their simplicity and innocence sense a friendship there, like a small animal, I guess. Puppies like me too.
Please join us in honoring John Criswell.
Very long time ago, my grandfather, now departed, who was a professor of English at Tulsa University, upon learning that I was going into the broadcasting business, said, "Do something decent with it, John." I certainly hope I have, and I'll certainly continue to try in the future. We journalists, particularly we television journalists, are quite often plagiarists. As you've just seen, I've plagiarized both of those things which we just saw. I hope I've done them as well as the people who started them. In thanks, I'm going to plagiarize someone that I'm very close to, my wife, Elizabeth, who's here this evening. She receives about 10 times more awards than I do. And not too long ago, when she received an award, she held it aloft and said, "I'm accepting this not so much in the spirit of for what I have done in the past, but as encouragement to continue to do it in the future." And that's the way I received this award this evening. Thank you very much.
The next award is the Christian Science Award. This award is presented to one who has distinguished himself in using his God-given talents. The Commission does not necessarily present this award annually, but when a person surfaces who has distinguished himself by exceptional service, an award is presented. This year's recipient has brought smiles to millions and brightened lives wherever he goes. As Grandpa Jones says every week, here's Hee Haw's Prime Minister of Humor, Reverend Grady Nutt.
These kids are all sitting on the front row, and they had a system worked out so that on Sunday night, whenever the preacher finally got started, the last one on the row would dart out and go to the fellowship hall of the church, come back with an armload of soft drinks. He'd have orange.
They call him the Prime Minister of Humor, and for the more than 25 million who see him each week on Hee Haw, there can be no doubt.
While the second row's wanting to kill him. And the first row get him.
Grady Nutt takes everyday experiences in his life and turns them into moments of laughter and glimpses of truth.
The choir disappears out of the choir, and he goes to the fellowship hall. He'd never gone for drinks. And he came back with his armload, and he sneaks up and shuts the door, and the congregation just cracked up. He had come out the wrong door, and he's in front of the rail. Sneaking up on the preacher, and the preacher is making a big gesture, and he looks down, and here's this kid. On the spot, the boy volunteered for foreign mission service.
Here in this lovely Louisville neighborhood, Grady Nutt works on real-life sermons because he is an ordained Baptist minister. Although he no longer pastors in a regular church, he still preaches and carries on other ministerial duties, such as wedding ceremonies.
Therefore, by the power vested in me as a minister of Jesus Christ, I pronounce that you are husband and wife in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. And what God has joined together, let no one seek to separate. Amen.
Grady is not only a real-life working minister, he also is an active church member.
It is the most special place in our lives outside of our home. Our best friends in the world are in that church. Our family is in that church. I spend 2/3 of my time on Sunday hugging everything from 3 to 90 because these are the most special people in the world to me.
Those of you who might have heard Terry and Sandy Townsend's
I guess if you really ask me about the pastoral aspect of my life and where it gets met, it's in this group. And, you know, here we are with couples 22, 24, 25 years old that turn out to be our dearest friends.
I entered Jerusalem on this trip. He came out like this.
I'm going to change the name of the park, dear. We're going from Cherokee Park to Mole Acres. I can't believe what the moles have done out here.
Grady and Eleanor met in college. They married at the end of her sophomore year. Their 2 sons, Perry and Toby, are both away at college.
But a lot of it's where the moles have chewed dead, too.
If you had to live your life all over again, would you do it the same way?
I'd go back to square one. I would choose to be raised a little differently, perhaps. I would choose to be more sensitive in some places and less egotistical and selfish in others. But, man, it's been a great trip. I have loved it. And you ask me if I'm happy, I don't know anybody that I've ever known that is any happier than I am. And I don't know many that are as happy as I am. When I have fun, it's flowing out of a guy that's terribly content with life. I do have a good time.
Ladies and gentlemen, Grady Nutt, the 1982 recipient of the Christian Service Award.
Let me read the award to you. Christian Service Award to Grady Nutt, Prime Minister of Humor, for reminding us that the gift of laughter is a hallmark of Christianity and more precious than silver or gold. He has used many forums to present Jesus Christ as the one who gives each person reason to rejoice. Without jeopardizing his faith, he has used humor to present unchangeable truths on radio, television, and in the print media. His gifts have not only been to the community of believers called Christians, but have also enriched the community at large. His continuing contributions to God's cause challenge us with the possibilities of service available to us all. We salute this Christian gentleman as a humorist with a ministry and a minister with a gift of humor.
Oh, goodness, thank you. It's especially a pleasure to me to have this presented in the state of Texas. You can tell from this twang that I am from here. I know how to say Fort Worth. I'm from Amarillo, where we wrench our clothes and learn to preach and talk here. We say words in Texas like B-L-E-E-V, believe this, believe that, believe something else. When you do, you're a believer, one who believes. What you believe is called your belief. And if you believe it enough, you can wind up going to FARN, foreign missions. We do all of that. I've had more fun in church than you should have, and consequently, I'm not pastor of one. Probably had the hardest time in my life deciding why in the world God would put his hand on a guy at age 13 and give him every feeling that he'd been called into the ministry, as we said then, and then give him gifts like playing the ukulele and a crazy sense of humor. I had more fun sometimes doing Hattie Call than I did messing around in the book of Habakkuk. I found nonsense more fun than making sense, but in the process of being shaped and molded by the wonderful folks who raised me and loved me in the church, I really have become who I am and am grateful for the trip. You saw in the presentation a moment ago the church which is the source of my strength, the Crescent Hill Baptist Church in Louisville, Kentucky. I owe it my life. My wife Eleanor and I both are deacons in that church, the only couple to serve simultaneously as deacons in the church, and we love and adore those folks for the care, the compassion, and the strength they give us. I'm grateful to the other church I belong to. I'm an assistant member, duly elected, as is Eleanor, by the Second Baptist Church of Lubbock, Texas. And at the next convention, I just may vote for them. You know, it has been done. We are strange and unusual folks as Baptists, and I suppose if God had put me in any other group, it would have had to have been the Church of Christ. Those people need to defend not playing the piano, and I could help them. I could do it. I could speak a good word and criticize folks who didn't wear socks with their tennis shoes when they played the organ and stuff like that. But in all of that, I would have to say from the depths of my soul that being part of these two fine churches and the church I served as pastor, the Grafenberg Baptist Church, Route 2, Waddy, Kentucky, has given me the strength I really do draw on from day to day. My wife, Eleanor, is the other strong minister in my life who meets so many of my deep needs in such an incredibly beautiful way. I've been blessed with two wonderful sons who bring a delightful sense of humor to daily living and who remind me every now and then that I'm just third best in our family when it comes to fun. I'm also pleased to be awarded this special presentation tonight because most of all it really lays hands in a sense of ordination on a gift I've committed to God. I don't know where I got the ability to look at that kind of stuff and get tickled at things like old homemade church pews and funeral home fans and pulling sheets to divide up for Sunday school. I grew up in little churches that didn't have educational buildings. Well, they did have a couple, but they weren't meant for group meetings. Generally, they were dedicated to meditation. They qualified as educational space because we stored old literature back there. And God blessed me many times from a 3-year-old Sunday school lesson, I assure you. It's been out of those kind of roots that my fun has grown. And I'm appreciative for people in small places and large places who continue to ask me to come and share my fun and have good times. I spend more time behind green peas and dead ham than any living human. My pulpit always has gravy on it, and I rather enjoy that. Thank you, John. I appreciate these New York people catch on fast. That's just great. I want to tell you just right quickly a story that I think summarizes my deepest feelings tonight. I share this in much longer fashion, but it's the story of Cinderella, which for me has become a parable. It would have made it in the New Testament, I really believe, if Jesus had ever heard of it. The story of Cinderella is a wonderful tale about a girl, as most of us know, who was locked in the cellar of her home cleaning up for her weird stepmother and two really super ugly sisters. The two girls were so ugly, if they'd had antlers, you'd have hunted them. I mean, these are ugly, ugly girls. Cinderella wasn't going to the party because she'd been locked in the cellar, but her fairy godmother appears, bang, with a magic wand, a little tinkle-inkle of clashing grass, and you all know about this, sends her out on the lawn to join up with the pumpkin to head for the party. Instructions to be back by midnight because the fairy godmother had worked a few other miracles that week so a couple of women could get in their clothes. They got to the castle. The prince was dancing hard and furious. He was really ticked off because they were all getting uglier by the minute when all of a sudden the flute player stuck it in his ear. Wow. Here stood Cinderella at the head of the stairs looking good. She floated down the stairs and her head never bobbed, and the king kept tapping the boy on the shoulder, said, "Pick that one, pick that one." They did dance. You know, therefore, they were not Baptist. I was trained that if you dropped a bowling ball on your foot, stand still, it'll hurt your witness. Don't do that. About 10 minutes to midnight, the prince did one of those turn loose and get back to you in a minute kind of moves that they're doing on the dance floor, and couldn't find her when he went back to look for her, only to see the flicker of her beautiful blue dress going out the stairwell at the head of the case, and he tore out after her. Saw Pumpkin disappear around the corner going 90 miles an hour. His heart was broken as he heard the clock strike 12. He walked back toward the building dejectedly, only to hear the clank of something on the ground, and picked up a little tiny glass slipper. Under a glowing torch on the side of the building at a 45-degree angle, he noticed Tom McCann. Strange name for a girl. And a size 4AA. His mind went to work, and you know the story, door to door like Avon with a bell out front. Bling blong, bling blong. The town crier announced that the prince was hunting for the woman with the dinky hoof. He came to her home, questioned her mother and two ugly sisters who'd been soaking their feet all week in pickle juice, trying to get ready for this moment, and with talcum powder couldn't get their big toes into 4AA. Anyone else in this house? No one else? Are you sure there's no one else? Well, we have a scrub girl. Send her to me. She didn't go. I locked the cellar myself. Send her to me. I am your local prince. Yes, sir. Opened the door and Cinderella fell out. She'd been listening at the keyhole, and when you see her grin, you can hear the violin start to finish the movie. Da-da-da, da. And you could see in their faces that they're fixing to experience ever after at the castle. He brushed her foot, slipped the shoe in place. She smiled meekly, and the curtains draw, and the lion growls, and MGM has done it again. Most of us have a tendency to finish the story out of memory and go home. One day it hit me in a beautiful fashion that the story of Cinderella is not really the story of a scrub girl who became a princess. Instead, it's the story of a princess who was trapped in a cellar. I understand the grace of God to be basically that he comes to us with a slipper that fits and sets us free to what we were meant to be. There's a quote in my life that I'll never forget, and I found it carved in barnwood in Gatlinburg. Laughter is the hand of God on the shoulder of a troubled world. I'm part of a diverse and unusual denomination of Christian people called Baptists. I don't want to change. I won't change. I'm going to stay in here and give the people who oppose me fits. I believe with all my heart that one of our great gifts is diversity. God did not call us to march in unison, but in harmony. And I believe with all my soul, each of us with his or her unique gift has something to offer specially to the kingdom. Mine just happens to be a little giddy, a little weird, and a little strange, but hopefully deeply from the heart. Nancy Allen prayed this prayer in our church in Louisville one Sunday, and it's been a special favorite of mine right alongside the Lord's Prayer ever since. Father, I thank you for the diversity of this church. I'm grateful that each rose is not red. I'm grateful that every flower is not a rose. I'm glad that I'm not like anybody. And I will tell you quite honestly, this slipper feels awful good. Thank you.